Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk about two object-oriented concepts. Brief overview without any preparation, nothing. Just going to be a random discussion on these two topics, encapsulation and abstraction. So let's start with abstraction. You can implement abstraction using two ways. Number one is you can use abstract classes or you can use interfaces. Now let's see what abstract class is. Well, if the class is defined using the keyword abstract, you can call it an abstract class. It's not a concrete class. What do I mean by that? Well, the methods inside these class they do not have body, like they do not have definition. There's just declaration of methods. So there are abstract methods in this class, but can abstract class can only contain abstract methods? Well, no. Abstract class can contain everything. It can contain a constructor, it can contain non-abstract methods, and it can contain some data like random data variables also. Variables are not abstract, by the way. So yes, but if a class or if an abstract method resides inside a class, then that class has to be an abstract class. So the problem with this it's not a problem, but important thing to note here is that you cannot instantiate these abstract classes. You cannot create objects using the new operator. You can't do it because not every method that is there is defined. So first of all, only concrete classes. Okay, so that's abstract class. Mm, त्याच्यानंतर abstract classes can contain abstract and non-abstract methods both. Now abstract class can contain constructors. Abstract class can be extended by another class. So for example, let's consider a new class, child class, and the parent class, let's consider that as abstract class. So there will be some methods from the parent class, that is from abstract class, that are inherited in the child class. So if the child class has to create objects, first of all it has to implement all those methods. So only then you can create objects of the child class, only when all the methods, be it inherited or its own methods, are implemented. So that's number one, abstraction. And basically, when do you use abstraction? For example, let's consider I have a class, say shape. Now shape could be anything: rectangular, circular, oval, elliptical shape, anything. uh, we don't know the formulas for calculating the area for each of these shapes, okay, but I know that every shape has some area and there's some way to calculate the area. Now as a programmer, I don't know the formula to do it, but I know that the behavior, that area can be computed. So what I'll do is, whenever I create a class, I'm going to write these methods there, but because I don't know the formula, I cannot compute. So there will not be implementation of these methods. These abstract methods will be part of those classes. And whenever I find out the formula, I can just come back to it, make the changes, and implement it. Like there's no body for the abstract methods, but once I know the formula, I'll do that, and then I can use those methods to compute the area of circle, compute the area of rectangle, circle, of square, anything. So abstraction, you implement it when you know that something exists, but you don't know how to implement it, but you know for sure that that object will have that behavior or will have that method, so you just implement it, abstract methods. Same thing goes with interfaces, exactly the same thing. Interfaces will also, you can use interfaces to implement abstraction in Java, the same thing, like there's not much difference there. So yeah, that's about abstraction. And the other part is encapsulation. Now people often get confused between these two, including me. So let me just put it this way. You go for encapsulation when you have the implementation and you want to hide that. For example, we'll see what it is exactly later on, but basically you have the implementation with you and then you're trying to hide some data, you're trying to protect some data, then you go for encapsulation. Whereas abstraction is when you don't know the implementation at all, so that's when you go for abstraction. So let's talk about encapsulation. Now, how do you implement encapsulation in Java? Well, there are two important points here. Whenever you think about encapsulation, these two things should come to your mind. Number one is declaring fields as private, like declaring variables private in a class. and allowing only certain methods, or only certain, we don't want everyone to access these variables. There has to be some control as to who can change the values of these variables, and some validation logic, if at all you have to implement that. So there has to be accessor methods. We are going to use accessor methods. So the idea here is that the variables will be private, but accessor methods like getter and setter methods, they are public methods. So you can change or update values of these private variables only via these accessor methods. So not everyone has access to these to not everyone can change the values of these private variables. We have certain control. Let's say let's And where it is used: encapsulation is reusability of code and ease of maintenance of code is where encapsulation comes into picture. I'll tell you exactly how. For example, let's say I'm a programmer and I am writing a class student, and according to the current business requirement, students, I will call a person a student if the age of that person is between 8 and 20. So anyone above the age 20 or below age 8 is not considered a student. So this is a validation logic that I have to implement whenever I accept the value for age. Now age is the variable that we will declare as private, and these getter setter methods will be public. So every time you have to set a method, or sorry, or assign a value, set a value to the age variable, we will use the set method. And in the set method we will write the logic that if at all the given integer, the accepted value from the user is above 8 and below 20, then only you assign that value to your private variable, otherwise don't. So that's the business requirement today. But if tomorrow the client changes its requirement and the client tells me that uh, anyone above the age of 10 and below age of 40 is considered student, so I have to make the changes in the validation logic. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the setter method, and that's where I'll make the changes without affecting rest of the code. I'll just make changes in that small part. So if there are other classes which are using these variables, or which are using methods from this class, or which are accepting age as variable, all that code will be unaffected because I'm only making changes in the setter methods. So so ease of maintenance or reusability of code is better. And let's imagine that if you don't write this logic in setter methods, you'll have to write this logic in your main class file, right? Not main function, but in your class file, like wherever it comes. So this is just one example of checking the valid input. There could be 100 such cases, and if I have to write those 100 test cases in the code, then that code will unnecessarily be complicated, because we know that those 100 conditions are applicable only for one variable. And that too when it comes to assigning a value to that variable. Then why should I write 100 cases there and make the code complicated? I don't have to do that. So I'm going to put that logic, the validation logic or the test cases logic, inside this setter method. So it becomes easy to update or make changes without affecting the rest of the code. And what we're achieving here is that we are allowing only getter and setter methods to access our variable. So we are kind of hiding our variables, private variables, from everyone else, from every other method. So it is possible that some other function may require the value of that variable, but that function cannot directly access the value of that variable. It has to access the value of this variable through getter method only. So we are achieving this information hiding or data hiding, which is everything is already implemented. We are just trying to protect our variables using access modifiers like private. So that's the concept about encapsulation. And this is just a brief overview. I have not prepared anything, or I don't have any notes. But yes, this is just the overview. I hope you have understood the concept, um, and all the best.